Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 21st Century Renaissance. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Opiano. I am joined today by my guest, Martin Wieser, who is tuning in from Salzburg, Austria. Martin, after studying for many years electrical engineering and computer science, decided to launch a project known as Edenauts. Martin is the host of a social media platform. He goes by the name of Visorium on social media. And we are going to talk today about his educational game, which seeks to make learning, according to the principles of Jean Piaget's genetic epistemology, not only accessible, but fun. So Martin, thanks so much for being us today. Herzlich willkommen.
Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Yes, me too. I'm so glad you can join us. So Martin, I'd like to share a little bit and learn a little bit about your background. So how did you come to designing this game? How did you come to working on Edenauts? What was that journey like for you?
To get to the project Edenauts, as you said, I studied to be an electrician. I made an apprenticeship, and then next to that, I got my A-levels, and then I get to study information technology. And
you said, just to interrupt for a second there, you said an E-levels. I don't understand what that is. What is that?
The A-level exams, it's Matura in
A-level exam. So it's like
yeah.
You said it's like Matura.
Yeah, it's Matura.
Okay, very good. So I guess to my audience members in the United States, right, we don't have this terminology. But Matura is something like, well, at least in Poland, I understand it as right. It's sort of like a capstone examination that qualifies you for academic achievement up to a certain level. Do I understand that correctly?
To get to enter the studies. Like
I see. Okay, so it works in Austria like it works here in Poland, insofar as it's like you have to meet a certain standard of performance in a certain field in order to be accepted to that faculty at the university level. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Very good. So in the United States, for example, we have some standardized tests, but they're sort of general aptitude tests. We have some subject tests, but it's kind of just like if the university likes you and you kind of have good general IQ and write a good personal essay, maybe some other factors depending on the university's mission statement, but we don't quite have that system. So okay, so you qualified in computer science for at this particular level. So you proceeded to studies in computer science after moving on from an apprenticeship as an electrician.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And yeah, in this sense, what I learned afterwards is that I was like my jobs and my education was very left brain sided, as you would consider it, very analytical, and so I lacked sort of character building humanities, and I had a lot of worries for learning and education myself. Had a lot of negative thoughts about that and was very insecure, and I wanted to stop that, but I got some right people who inspired me that education could be different. So I started to thinking about that, and got deeper into that. And as you first said, the initial idea of Edenauts, before it was called InfoSnack, and so I was let's say a shy kid, not very happy about myself, and what I didn't like at school was like the sort of blaming the judgment in the school was one main point of me, the judgment in the school. And with InfoSnack, the first thing I created was a WhatsApp group where I wanted to ask people, I wanted to ask questions, like one question a day, and I wanted different people to answer them. So I get different viewpoints to one question.
So I'd like to, before we move on to keep going with the genesis of Edenauts here from InfoSnack, I'd like to ask you a couple questions about your exposure to the humanities and character building. So one of the hallmarks of the the capital R European Renaissance, the Italian Renaissance, was its genesis. Largely, right, scholars largely agree that the genesis of the Renaissance as a whole originated from Renaissance humanism. There's a number of different scholarly examinations of the Renaissance that point to this movement called Renaissance humanism, which this term, right, humanism, comes from the German Humanismus. It is an early 19th century term developed actually in the context, right, of an education debate right. So in early 19th century Germany, there was this debate over what was the proper way to have a general system of education. And the debate was between what was sort of deemed two models. One of them was Humanismus, and the other was Prosanthropinismus, right? So the idea of humanismus, of humanism, the humanist model in the 19th century, was developed out of this Renaissance model of education that was emphasized, or which emphasized character education, right? That emphasized understanding, beauty and eloquence, and understanding them on the level that they were understood in the classical tradition. So within traditional Greek and Latin works, and also within the context of the Christian tradition. Prosanthropinismus, prosanthropinism, something like that, I guess in English, that's not a word that we use, was more about this kind of technical, understanding, right? That students really should go and acquire skills with utility, right? Not necessarily character building, right? You can leave that to religious institutions. You can leave that to sort of church on Sunday. What students really should learn is it's in the state's interest. This is particular, right? In the 19th century, right? Thinkers like Alexander von Humboldt, right? The idea that the general school system, right, is in the state's interest that individuals, that students, especially young men, have not necessarily character education, but they have these useful skills that can benefit the state in times of crisis, in times of building, right, industrialization, right? They should learn modern languages so that they can, be able to protect against, say, Prussia's neighbor, something like that, right? They should learn maybe Russian and French and English or something like that, rather than Latin and Greek. Okay.
State, and throughout the 19th century, right, in the German school system, and also in, right, German meaning sort of the Großdeutschland idea. So also in, also in Austria, right, also in, right, this is a time where Germany was not yet unified into a single country. There was, right, you had both various German states. So, so throughout the 19th century, sort of moved over to this utilitarian model. And so in the late 19th century, when the German Empire unified, there was a movement away from what was the traditional Renaissance style, or the old humanist gymnasium, into the new model of school that was more utilitarian, right? So this had also been a problem in the Renaissance, although, right, the Renaissance thinkers, Renaissance humanists themselves, individuals like Petrarch or Leonardo Bruni, were particularly critical of how universities, right, so how the medieval university was primarily geared toward the professions meaning law, medicine, and theology, the main issue that humanists took with the universities was that the law curriculum overly dominated the way that things were done. And their idea was that the classics should be studied, not specifically for this end of having a professional career and having these utilitarian skills, but character education. And that actually what was going to be most beneficial to the state. So I'm very interested to learn more about this element of character education, since you said here that sort of your education through this sort of apprenticeship to be an electrician and your studies in computer science was sort of light or absent any form of character education. So how did you come to character education? How did you find that? What was going on there?
I got to character education mainly when I started to think about education and how I like to learn, how to build a school. Sometimes I say it's the best school to build a school, because then you have to reflect on how you would do it on your own.
Interesting. So you were thinking about it in the context of actually, you came to these ideas through thinking about how to build a school.
Yes, this was very fascinating for me. Yeah, you get it from a different point of view when you like to design a school. How would you set it up? You need to reflect on yourself, what is important to you, and you organize yourself a little bit. And next to that, yeah, I also was watching a lot of YouTube, and a neighbor, a Croatian guy, back then introduced me also to Jordan Peterson. Yeah, and then I was this come well aligned with my educational thoughts, and so I could think along the project also with the background of the courses from Peterson, like the personality and its transformations and the maps of meaning. And whenever I tried to when I designed the game, back then it wasn't a game, it was just an educational platform, from my side thought as that. And I picked up the ideas and I tried to include it into the game so I could directly apply it in some sense and think about it and that helped me a lot to develop my character, because yeah, on the one side hearing a lot of new ideas and also trying to integrate it and to experiment in life how it works.
So it's very interesting that you mentioned that Jordan Peterson in particular was so influential to you and on some of these ideas of character education, maybe how to you in this process of forming sort of a new sort of school and building some sort of project out of that. Jordan Peterson was also influential to me in the context of my graduate work and in some other, well, in some similar dimensions, but maybe in a similar spirit. Perhaps you could speak a bit on what ideas in particular, maybe as concerns character or as concerns, you mentioned certain new ideas. What ideas in particular did you find to be the most salient in your thinking in this direction, the most influential?
The most influential would be, so at first, the Big Five personality model. This was very interesting to me, and also the way Peterson presents his ideas. He's like very realism. Yeah, he just tries to say it as it is, and yeah, I didn't experience this in my life so much. I often experience now. It's yeah, it's not so straight. It was like a straight thing, and I could, yeah, he's telling it in a way that you can pick it up fast. And through him also, I got to the ideas of Jean Piaget, and also about the idea of genetic epistemology, which I would now describe best like in the world often we have disagreements, and when you have a disagreement with somebody, you can ask, you don't take that as face value. What is more cooler to me is like asking, how did you come to this conclusion? What information leads to this idea? So it's not a direct judgment, it's finding out, it's exploring the idea more, and that is a good way for me to do it. And yeah, it's inspiring to do that, and people learn also more about themselves.
Yeah. So yeah, I also found right, Peterson's method, right? He has a how about doing things, right? The way that he speaks, the way that he writes, right? The way that he communicates ideas, I think that sort of appealed to me, and may have been one of the first things I think that keyed me off to this 21st century Renaissance idea. Insofar as I noticed a number of patterns, sort of the way he orients himself, for example, to terms, right? He arrives at a concept, he arrives at a set of terms, and then he stops, and then he philologically breaks down what the word means. And then with that philological breakdown, then he goes, okay, but now here's how we translate that into the experiential world, right? Here's how you experience those words, right? That's actually what this person, for example, Piaget, right? Genetic epistemology. I know specifically in his lecture, I remember on genetic epistemology, he got to genetic epistemology and immediately said, okay, genetic epistemology, here's how you break down this word. Genetic, like Genesis, that's how you, how things come into being, right? So epistemology, this is how we know things. So genetic epistemology is how knowledge comes into being. Jean Piaget was deeply interested in the structures of how we come to know something, not just knowledge itself, but how we actually build structures of knowledge. So, you know, his way of being able to sort of dive into or explain things like that was very reminiscent to me of, say, the humanist, the Renaissance humanist preoccupation with etymology and philology and such. So that was a thing I think we can connect on there. I am interested to learn more about your connection to Piaget. So perhaps you could go into detail for us, maybe a little bit more about how specifically you connected with Piaget's ideas. So why was this process of, say, asking, hey, okay, I'm in a disagreement, how did you come to that conclusion, right? Why was that useful to you? Why did you connect with that? Why was that so interesting to you?
There were a series of events. Next to getting to know Piaget, I also did courses on big history. There's the Big History Project from David Christian, and at Piaget there is the main concept of the model of cognitive development with its 4 stages, and at the same time, when I get to know the model and exploring that, I was also doing the course on big history. And somehow what really inspired me is when I so I learned about big history and the time and the main thresholds of development, how they call it there. And I'm trying to connect it to the model of cognitive development of Piaget. And I try to just imaginary fit the development of the universe into the framework of Piaget. So I took the universe, did like it was a human, and applied the model of Piaget and tried to think that how would that map out. And I tried to mind map it, and this proves very inspiring thoughts in me, that you can apply this model on different levels. in different scales. So somewhat what I learned is the thinking in scales. You can take a small concept, and a small concept is also like it's sort of recursive. Also the elements are recursive on different levels. That was very inspiring to me. But where I disagreed with the stage theory, it was a good orientation how things proceed. And also for my own personal development, often you take things as right or wrong, and the stages gave me a way to think that more gradually. It's not right or wrong, I'm at this place. I can see myself in this place. So the stages gave me a framework to not see it so binary. And
so
yeah,
perhaps no, go ahead.
Where I disagreed with was the time scales, like Piaget has in his model of cognitive development, like from 0 to 2, the sensomotorical stages, like from 2 to 7, the pre-operational stage, and so on. But I just don't care about that. I just have the stages as a reference that help myself in my learning life, and to see things gradually.
Okay, so I'd like to for our audience, right? I'd like to maybe go into detail on these sort of two main theoretical structures, right? That Piaget is working with, right? Some of us might not be familiar with Piaget's work. It might be helpful just to flesh some of this out a little bit. So my understanding, right, my exposure to Piaget, which is a good deal of it is mediated through Peterson, but I have read some of Piaget's writing. Some of it is a bit difficult, and that I personally have not quite yet had the time to go into sort of every dimension of his research portfolio. But my understanding is that there are sort of two main widely disseminated sort of elements of Piaget's thinking today. The first, of course, is this developmental stage theory. And in fact, it's my understanding too that not even kind of the full developmental stage theory is the one that is most widely circulated, right? Most of there's this sort of 4 developmental stage model that gets circulated a lot. But of course, there's this sort of hypothetical 5th stage, which is, I think, usually referred to as post-formal developmental cognition, something like that, right? And some people have I think developmental psychologists have gone on with that, but it's largely not talked about, and it wasn't largely talked about. For example, there are some publications that discuss Piaget in the 1970s don't talk about post-formal education at all. And there's this idea that really not everybody is capable of going through that sort of post-formal stage. And then the other set of ideas is the sort of assimilation accommodation element, right? These sort of two paradigms or kind of archetypal approaches to incorporating anomalies into our current structures of the world. So maybe you could tell us a bit more about how you understand and what elements of this sort of developmental model or this stage model and Piaget's sort of broader model of how we build structures, how that sort of what that is and how that factors into your thinking.
Also it is represented in my game, like you told about assimilation and accommodation. And yeah, like my brother, he has 2 daughters, and he was at the child garden, and then another child, not his daughters, came to him and said dad to him. So the child of the other dad has a model of what dad is. So the child says dad to him, but it's obviously wrong.
So to the other parent.
but not for the child. It's the child's current schema, and what the child needs to do, it needs to make an abstraction. Maybe it could make the abstraction bearded man, a bearded person, and this is my dad, and this is the dad of Clara or something. And so this is sort of the process of the child tries to assimilate that, what she knows, and in his schemas, like says dad to my brother. But an accommodation is then made, this is not my dad, this is another bearded man, and there is the abstraction of bearded man. So a hierarchy is created with that, with the process of accommodation. Then I need a new world schema, and I build a hierarchical structure because I need to differentiate those two schemas.
Okay. So just to, I'll sum this up, and you can tell me, let me know if I've got this right. So the idea here is that there is, so as human beings, right, we have a sort of working model of the world, and what we do is we sort of build this model of the world and what's in it. And the way that we do this is through this kind of experimentation or exploration out in, right, the world itself. And so, right, as far as we're concerned, right, we don't, right, there is the world out there which is filled with infinite complexity. And so when we come out as children, right, we're not, it's maybe terrifying, or we can't, right, we're limited beings, we can't process infinite complexity. And so we build this sort of this workable structure of the world through our encounters with the world that allows us to operate safely. But obviously, as we keep living in the world, we encounter new anomalies, right? Things that sort of threaten to break our model and say, hey, your model is not sufficiently sophisticated to account behaviorally for this anomaly, right? So, you live with your, let's say you're with your parents all the time, something like that. And, or I think I'll use a different example. Peterson has this example where, you drive, this is in Maps of Meaning and Discourses, he uses this example. You drive to work on a regular basis, right? And you think, and you say that what you drive in is a car, and you're very familiar with a car. And you go to work and back, and as far as you're concerned, right, a car is the thing that takes you to work and back. And a car is something that takes, say, 40 minutes of your attention per day. And it will take you to where you need to go in 20 minutes, and that tells you something about how much time you have in the morning. And it'll take you back at the end of the day home in about 20 minutes, barring traffic, something like that. And as long as it works, that's really as sophisticated as your model of a car is. And, okay, you know how to operate it. You can operate the steering wheel, right? You can press the pedals, something like that, but it'll just take you to where you want to go. However, as soon as something goes wrong, your model of a car is now insufficient to account for this contraption that you usually sit in, right? It's not working. It's not taking you where to go. And so you open up the hood and boom, there's this massive assortment of complexity that you have no idea how to sort. And so now you've got to get in touch with a mechanic who now you've got to think about, okay, well, now my access to my car is now mediated by a person, an expert that I get in touch with who can repair it. And now I have to think about, okay, what sort of person can I trust? Is this person going to do it? What's the timeline going to be? Are they going to gouge me for money? What's this going to mean for me with respect to my schedule, right? Suddenly, a car goes from this very simple, reliable element that you can rely on to now it's this massive, it's this gateway into a world of complexity that you never have to worry about. So Piaget posits these two modes of learning when we encounter anomalies, right? Any anomaly, something that we don't have a name for, right? An anomaly, is something that threatens to open a portal in our world into the world of infinite complexity. And so we have two ways of approaching that anomaly. We can say, okay, here's an anomaly. Does this thing that I've never encountered before, is it actually something that I've encountered before, but it just has a kind of specific orientation to it that just makes it look unfamiliar to other things that I've encountered before? So for example, you run into, let's say you've only ever seen house cats in your life, and you run into a cat that happens to be black, let's say, but you've only ever seen, say, red cats and orange cats and white cats and things like that. You say, oh, I've never seen a black cat before. Is this black house cat something that could kill me, right? I've never seen this before. Is it dangerous? Is it gonna hurt me? Something like that. And then you look at it, you see how other people maybe react to it, and you're like, oh, no. It just happens to be, it's the same thing as these other house cats. It just happens to be black. Right, but then, you're walking down the street, or it wouldn't be the street, but you're walking through the jungle and you come across a different kind of black cat that's a little bit bigger, right? And you go, okay, what about this thing, right? It's a little different. It turns out, right, it's a puma, and it's definitely gonna kill you, right, in the jungle. So in that case, right, in the first case, you resolve that problem by saying, well, actually, this thing that I've encountered is like all these other things that I've seen. And so you assimilate it into a pre-existing, let's say, a category, yes, but Piaget would call something probably an operational structure, right? How do you engage with it? How do you orient yourself with respect to it behaviorally? How does it function for you as a tool, something like that? So you assimilate it, you bring it in, you make it more like, that's what assimilate means, one of these previous operational structures that you already have. And with the puma, let's say, you encounter that and you go, wait a second, this is very much not like a house cat, because I see the way this thing is looking at me, and I see its posture, and I see its behavior. It may be black, it may be a cat, oh, but that is very different than the black cat that I just crossed on the street. So what I need to do is I must build a new operational category, and that's accommodation, where you have to modify and reconfigure your world system to account for that anomaly, because it breaks your paradigms. None of your current operational structures adequately are adequate for dealing with that encounter. Do I understand these two ways of engaging with the world? Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, for sure. I would exactly say that, yeah. The accommodation, assimilation, and together in a process of constant evolving, it's making an equilibrium. Yeah, a great state where you can comprehend for all experiences. Okay.
So the next thing I want to touch on here is also, how do you understand this this developmental stage theory? How does that work? And maybe you can speak a bit more about how you understand that and how you've applied that. You had some interesting remarks here about how it relates to maybe understanding your own learning process and understanding maybe different frameworks of learning as applicable or sort of generally applicable across a sort of hierarchy of magnitudes, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thinking in scale.
Okay.
Yeah, for as a learning model, it helps me because it's not binary, it's stages. So what I wanted to do with Edenauts also, I want to ask people about weird talents. I wanna develop with every Edenaut a stage theory of a weird talent. So
okay,
I like to think in the stages because you have reference points and you can define it yourself. Like I think that people can define anything in a stage and can approximate that. They have some world knowledge and they can approximate how that could play out. So when they do that, they have this own model. And I want to do this with talents. You have any weird talent, you try to model a stage theory just by your means. You can say what is coming next, and to revisit the stages, because there is for example, I have a child now, and she's 1 year old, and as a child, it's the sensomotorical stages. She learns a lot about her body through the movement. And then next would be the pre-operational stage, and then the operational and the formal operational. But in learning, we always come back to the first stage. When you learn something, you try to orient yourself. When you get to a new, you want to live in a new flat, you orient yourself. Where are the shops? Where can I put my trash, and so on. You need to, like sensomotoric, you need to get to know that. And also what's one proof of that when I get to a formal operational stage somewhere, I'm fully in the formal operation? No, I'm not. For example, when I tried card tricks and I couldn't do it. So do I think I'm perfect at the sensomotorical stage? No, because I can't spin the cards so well. Like, I'm learning it, but I would give you, it would break the model of Piaget for you, because maybe you can't spin it. You need to learn 20 hours to do that, to spin it really cool. But it's a proof that the model goes always back to the sensomotoric stages. And so in this sense, whenever I learn anything, I can see it in those stages and have reference points for me, which help me to not think it's so binary. I still suck, but I'm at this stage. So this makes my life easier. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So Piaget and sort of what a lot of developmental psychologists, or what in general people tend, or intro psych courses maybe tend to take away from Piaget, is that he says, okay, well, human beings as we mature, from the time that we're children to adults, right? This is, say, a lot of the process which Piaget looked at throughout his career, is that, right, we go through these sort of stages of cognitive development that are oriented or characterized by a certain type of learning. So, for example, the first stage that we go through, the sensory motor stage, is, say, modeling the world with our body, right? We're just sort of going through the motions. Okay, what is it like when we're babies, right? What is it like for me to use my mouth? What is it like for me to use my tongue, right? And then it spreads to something like, what is it like for me to use my hands, right? Developmental psychologists talk about, the baby's discovery of its hands is something that happens. And then they spend all this time just like kind of gripping things and, oh, what is it like for me to use my hand in relation to this object? Or what is it like me to use my hand in relationship to this object, right? What does it feel like when I touch this? What does it feel like when I lick this? What does it feel like, right? So just sort of experimenting with the body and kind of modeling the world onto the body. But there's not really there's no abstraction going on here. There's no formation of, say, a representation of the world outside of how we understand it with our bodies when we're at a certain stage, right? And so then we sort of progress through, we use this kind of experimental engagement with the world to represent the world at sort of higher degrees or higher complexities of abstraction, right? Higher degrees of sophistication, something like that. Okay. And largely people orient themselves, or what people tend to take away from Piaget is that, oh, okay, people go through these kind of rigorous stages, like you said, so 0 to 2, oh, that's sensory motor stage. But then from 2 to 7, at the pre-operational stage, right, we've moved off of sensory motor, and then after that there's the operational stage and there's the formal operational stage, something like that. And then after that, right, oh, then we have formal operations. And supposedly then in the formal operational stage, or when the formal operational stage has been encountered, then all learning that we do is formal operational, right? It's sort of these rigorous divisions of how human beings go about their learning. But that's not what you're saying is your takeaway from that. And this is the point, let's say, maybe where your departure is, where you depart from that understanding, in that you say, well, actually, that process generalizes to any new skill domain that you might encounter. So you have this example here of cards, right? When you want to start learning cards, even though you're an adult and you can engage in formal operation, you don't just go straight to the formal operation high abstract representation of card tricks, because you've never used cards, you've never tried to do sleight of hand with cards before. And so before you try to pull off any tricks and do theory of mind with the audience and sort of talk about how this relates to generalizing philosophical concepts, you're like, well, I got to learn actually how to spin the cards, and I got to learn how to move them in the deck. I got to do all these things that really aren't a card trick at all, but me understanding how to make cards an extension of my body first. And so your takeaway from this is not just that, like, okay, this developmental stage theory is interesting in the context of children, but sort of outside the context of children, it's not. That's not what you're saying. You're saying this structure, right? This movement from stage to stage to stage is actually a structure of learning that we can take and generalize to anything that we might learn. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So Edenauts, as far as I understand, and Edenauts, you're saying, is something that you're designing to teach people how to essentially, well, what this structure, right, what this progression of cognitive stages or learning stages is like, what this process is like, but then also how then to generalize that structure to anything that they might learn. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, you can basically start with anything. I always like to start with the biggest talent or somebody or something somebody has the most interest in, because then you can run that simulation the first time and explore it with the thing that is most interesting to you. And then also through the game should teach it on several levels. On the one hand, for the story, should include elements of that, how this works, and also on the doing side, on the embodiment side, I want people to do Piaget's ideas and understand it then that way. So, for example, in Edenauts, we have an interface, and it's a hierarchical structure. And where we start first is the bottom. Like Edenauts is very focused on reflection. So you reflect on your day, and you have daily experiences, raw experiences, and they get into this. It's a bubble, and you get a lot of bubbles in there. And then what you can do is you can abstract that bubbles. So you start with the experiences, the sense motorical, what did I do in the world, and then abstract out from that. And do this process of assimilation and accommodation, because you can restructure, it's like you have the folder structure of your computer. Often you mess around and then you clean up and reorganize.
Okay.
And when you do this process long enough, the goal would be, as a Edenaut crew, to make a hierarchy of everything, abstract every raw experience out, to maybe a sort of a philosophical structure about how we want to organize the world for ourselves.
Okay, so Edenauts not only is teaching, well, right, teaching through playing the game, right? The idea here, and I'll ask you more about this in a second, specifically how this works, right? The game is designed to teach you this structure through play. So you play a game, which then not only teaches you how to be aware of this kind of progression through these types of learning stages and what that looks like with, say, learning or developing a better understanding of any particular talent or skill, like you said, any particular domain of knowledge or learning that someone might want to experience or develop, but also how to use and be aware of this kind of assimilation, accommodation sort of approach, how to be aware of assimilation and accommodation in the context of building out and becoming more conscious of this learning developmental chain, to the end that then it provides a way to connect this new domain of knowledge that you're experiencing to a sort of general philosophical model of the world. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So go on.
Yeah, it's this process of doing that. What's really important, and I once asked you on Instagram about questions I can come up with, which can be asked to any topic. And what I learned over the years is, like, reflection is not that easy thing for everyone. to have a question and now reflect on that and finding a solution or how one think about this. So for me, there is also a big importance in how the questions are asked, to the ease how they can be answered. So there needs to be an element of casual. So yeah, it's an element of play. It should not be like, now give this answer, reflect on that, and give. It should be more. It should be very play-like to think about this stuff and not being driven to I need to give an exact answer now. Should go a little bit around that and through that play and exploring different aspects of, for example, a topic like biology or something, to see different perspectives and come to conclusion through that.
Yeah, so this component of play you're approaching with a kind of exploratory orientation, right? It's not playing so that you can memorize answers to specific questions or prompts or queries or something like that, but play as a means by which to, say, open the door to exploratory behavior and discovery and such. So, okay, so I'm interested to hear a bit more about how the game, right, how the game is structured. How exactly does Edenauts accomplish this, right? Now that we kind of have this premise of, okay, what its aim is to do, what it's going to potentially teach people and allow people to grasp and come to terms with and understand and be more aware of, namely these very natural structures of learning that are sort of embedded and embodied in us. How does Edenauts do this? How is Edenauts structured? What's the premise of the game? What is it like to play Edenauts? Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
I want to start by starting how the game starts. It's a survival story game, and you get thrown into a world where meteorites come to Earth, which represent problems. And you get to meet a guy, and he's an AI engineer, and he is just seeking for a hidden rocket with a new AI, which have all the human knowledge in it. And they're on the mountain, and they see that the meteorites come, and they need to survive. They want to get into the rocket, which they see in the valley, and they sneak into the rocket and take off with the rocket. But what happens, as they don't calibrate their weight, the rocket is itself hit by a meteorite. So the system breaks down, and the knowledge system of the brain of the ship is broken. And then what the crew can do is they need to land on the moon, and they need to fix this system now. And they have a manual interface to do that. And the AI engineer gets punished because they sneaked on the rocket. He gets punished to repair this brain now. And he's somewhat also not the expert, and he asks the crew for help through the interface. And ongoingly in the story, there is also Jean Piaget as character in it. And he's unconscious after the meteorite hit. And so the main character, the AI engineer, tries to repair the system, but doesn't get far. And later, Piaget awakens from his being unconscious and is guiding the main character with the ideas of genetic epistemology to help him accomplish the goal of repairing the system, and also together with the crew, and they will unlock new features. As I said, at the center point are the daily experiences of the crew, and the hierarchical structure where the experiences will come in and will get abstracted.
Okay.
So they run through the stage theory in this sense that they are getting abstracted from real world experience to, in the end, formal operational structure of how they categorize the world.
Okay, interesting. So just to sort of sum this up to make sure, again, I have the right idea here. So
by the way, I love your summaries a lot. They're great.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, I just want to make sure, right? I want to make sure that I'm understanding, I have the proper model, right? This is, one thing I found, right, super useful, for example, in the context of my university courses, right? So very often you have discussion groups and you ask undergraduate students something like that, like, hey, what do you think of this question? And they present an idea to you, and right, they're usually exploring the idea, right? They don't necessarily know what they know. They're just like, well, this is what I think. And so then be like, is this it? This is how I understood what you said. Is that what you meant? And then it gives, it would give them a chance to be like, oh, no, actually I meant this, or hey, yeah, that is what I meant. Actually, yeah, that's a good way to put that. So I just want to make sure that's advantageous for me to be able to say, like, okay, I want to make sure I understand what you're talking about here. So, right, especially because this has a lot of complexity to it. It's a very interestingly designed game, as we can tell. So, okay, so the sort of the overall structure, right? If I'm somebody approaching this game and I'm going to play this game and I'm checking it out, it's got this sort of outside structure like you would see like with an RPG, right? So it's got a story structure to it. You build a character, you go into this world. The world is kind of set up for you, and you've got this basic narrative structure where you are motivated and guided just like you would in, say, like, Mass Effect or something, right? I think it's like I remember playing Mass Effect 3, right? In Mass Effect 3, you like the game begins with there's this machine race that's going to come and destroy all life in the universe, and so it's something like that, right? There's like meteorites that are coming, right? Something is they're going to impact Earth, and there's going to be impacts all over the Earth, and so your group of your squad on Earth has to get into this rocket ship that's got a spaceship that's got an AI brain, and so it can get out of the system and escape the meteorites. But the brain gets hit, it gets damaged, and they crash on the moon. Then they've got to rebuild the brain. And so something like on the moon, right? You've got something like an Obi-Wan Kenobi character played by Jean Piaget himself. Comes to the main character and doesn't teach him how to use the Force, but teaches him the concepts, right? Guides him through sort of guides him through genetic epistemology, which is exactly what is necessary, right? The main characters must master the concepts of genetic epistemology in a gamified form in order to actually repair the brain and then, escape the Earth sort of do it before humanity is lost or they're stuck on the moon forever or something like that. So we've got that structure. So what are the actual, let's say that's the premise, that's the form of the game. What are actually like the mechanics? So if I'm thinking about like, okay, so if I'm a hardcore gamer and I'm like, okay, but are the actual mechanics of the game fun? What's going on here? What are some of the tasks, or what are the sort of engagements in the context of the gameplay that the player could be expected to experience? It doesn't have to be comprehensive, but what are some of these elements? What does this look like?
Yeah, the game is centered around reflection and tasks. There will be some challenges. You need to really go out in life and try out for a day. Try some challenges, and they will be tailored to the talents. Especially, everyone can choose a talent, and we want to build a world model around the talent through reflectional exercises. They have a space log. They can reflect on their day and maybe how it is related to, at first, to tasks they did on this day, and second, the talent. And through that, it's like a reflection is like a, let's say you see learning, you have a dark room and you're building your own room through that. You have your talent, and your interests, and you can build the world through reflection around that. And how should I yeah, the main thing, a reflectional exercise, fitting into this overarching crew hierarchy where they can abstract from the experiences. And yeah, and I want also people to get to know a lot of different topics a little bit, and in a playful manner. For example, when I learned about, I said I was an electrician and technician, and I didn't care about history at all in my school. But also I didn't care because I didn't know anything. So when I progressed in my learning journey, I started to learning about history, and then I find myself in front of or in a museum and trying to approximate, categorize, because I had a little bit of knowledge I could work with. So I want to also engage people through this interface, various different topics, so they can wrap their mind a little bit to get the process just started. Okay. And yeah, then it will move on anyway.
Okay, so the players, right? So say they're on the moon, they're being mentored by Jean Piaget, and they're prompted maybe with these kind of reflected mini games, let's say, these sort of sub games, where they must engage with a particular domain of knowledge, either something more, well, I guess not either practical or theoretical, but building knowledge up through this hierarchy of practical, embodied, operational, all the way up to an abstract stage. So it's not like, hey, you're going to come on and you're going to just kind of get questions thrown at you from some theoretical domain of university knowledge. And it's not just going to be like, hey, you're going to do these mini games that'll, you'll just be, you can like turn a screwdriver better or something like that. It's going to be the integration of different fields of knowledge based on various appealing talents, where they'll build this whole sort of connected chain of knowledge that then afterward they'll be able to go up and down, that links a kind of practical, operational, active knowledge up all the way to the highest kind of degree of abstraction. And they'll do that through these games.
Yeah, exactly. That's very
Okay.
important.
Okay.
And through the reflectional exercises, uh, it's very important to do this for a period of time, because whenever you do things for a period of time, you learn to see the patterns. And when you write down every day, you write down ideas and or journaling, it can be also described as sort of a journaling, a digital journaling book integrated in a game, where you learn to see patterns through reflecting on your experiences and talents. And then you, in this sense, and where it's connected to the stage theory also, before you told there are other people who think about stage theories in different terms, a different amount of stages. And there's Robert Kagan, and where I want to specifically point at, he said that most people are stuck in the socialized mind. Next to, would be his third stage, and his fourth stage is the self-offering mind. And I want to get people from the socialized mind into the self-offering mind through that reflectional exercise, where they then become their own teacher through seeing the patterns of what they're doing.
Okay.
They can be constructive. This is the constructivist element.
Okay. So this sounds something like this reminds me, I'm not familiar with Robert Kagan, but this sounds very familiar to, say, sort of Jung's process of psychotherapy. So something like, right, that sort of maps to Jung's terminology, that part of the process from moving to childhood into sort of adolescence and early adulthood is the formation of a persona, where one develops an identity that, or a personality that exists with respect to the group, right? It's a specific sort of formulation of behavior and values and sort of operations and displays that correlate to the person that one is within the context of a certain social group. However, Jung, in particular, as I understand his psychotherapy, points to or finds that many individuals get stuck believing that the only person that they are is the persona of them that exists within a social group. So that who they are as a whole, as a person, is actually that social persona. And that sort of the other people that they might be, say, who they are in relation to certain elements of themselves, gets obfuscated, it gets covered up, it doesn't emerge, it doesn't, as Jung would say, they don't go through individuation. They do not move into this stage of moving beyond the set of, say, personae that they've cultivated and built and constructed for themselves. And Jung points to a lot of, say, psychopathology or psychopathology of adults or persons, as Jung would say, in the second half of life, which he sort of identifies as being around 30 to, after about 30 to 35, as being a problem of not being able to move beyond their persona, not having been able to turn to understand that the different, archetypes of people, right? The person who mentors them, and the person who is responsible for their creative inspiration, and the person who is responsible for their provision, and the person who is responsible for their protection. That sort of all of these frameworks of personalities exist within them, and that the true self is kind of the aggregation of all of these elements of personality. So his psychotherapy was built around, and to a large degree, Peterson's psychotherapy is built around that as well, is helping people move from the stage of being stuck in the persona, in the social dimension of themselves, into this more fleshed out self-authored, right? Peterson actually directly uses this term self-authored. He has a self-authoring suite, into this individuation process, into being a more complete version of themselves, into an understanding that the many personas and sort of sub-personalities within them are all sort of constituent parts of, well, a many in one type of person. Right? That there is this psychological development and also learning development and engagement with the world that occurs when one understands that one is the guide to the furthered construction of their own self. It's not solely dependent on the whim or the pressures of the group, or sort of, we could put in air quotes something like
an
the
example here.
environment.
I experienced this in my life when you have established a certain established your social like this social, it pressures on you, and when you have a certain persona in a group, and this for a long time, and maybe you develop further, and this is why I think a semester abroad could help you in that, because when you're in a group, you always get this pressure from how they expect you to be. And if you go abroad, or you leave the environment for a while, you can experiment newly and try to create a new persona, or adapt it in a way you like it. So somewhat it's helpful to get out and to have a space to reconfigure it. And I think that helps a lot. Often when I get this social in these environments, I still behave like I did always. Because the social pressure, I don't see it as so much pressure now, but the expectations of how other people think you are pressing on you. And if you go through the self-offering, like Peterson's work, you learn to that not just your identity is from outside, the socialized mind, but you can also contribute a lot to that and build it. So Peterson's exercises, you define what do you want, and you can build that in. And so you have a lot of influence in that. And
There's two thinking in two dimensions there, based on your comments. So one of them has to do with my own personal experience of this sort of studying or living abroad element that you talked about, and the other is a response to Peterson's self-authoring. So I think I'll start with Peterson's self-authoring, and then I'll move to this this personal story. So right, one thing I noticed in sort of Peterson's self-authoring is that he kind of has two dimensions, I think, at least two, that there may be a third, but two that sort of readily come to mind that he tries to help people understand with respect to this process of, as Jung would call it, individuation, as Peterson calls it, kind of self-authorship. And they center around the kind of Cartesian Descartes subject-object divide, or the sort of the mind-body divide, something like that. The realm of mind and the realm of matter, something like that. And the Cartesian idea, and sort of what is a bit more intuitive, and something that I think is very well established kind of unconsciously in Western civilization, is the idea that there is a material world out there, and that material world is objective. You have no say in the composition of that world, something like that. And then you've got a totally subjective realm of psyche on the inside. That's the mind. And what is outside of you, you know, that's you can't really mess with that. And what's inside of you, that's totally up to something like your will, right? You can almost like completely pattern your mind, your psyche, or something like that according to your will. It seems to me that divide is right. There's a sort of strict partition in that divide, and that characterizes a lot of sort of unconscious Western understandings of the psyche today. And Peterson's point with this is like, well, there are two kind of directions to that then get eschewed, right? That get missed. And it's that on the inside, there are things that you can pattern according to your will, however you might want to characterize that, right? You do have you can exercise some control. You can manifest some directedness with respect to the patterning of your internal landscape of your soul and things like that. But also it has dimensions to it that are like the exterior material world that are not malleable, let's say, or at least not malleable outside of a certain set of natural criteria, right? So it's not like, well, you know, it's not biological determinism. It's not that biology is your destiny necessarily. Like, you're not going to arrive at a sort of specific material point and look a specific way and have a certain set of experiences and have a certain set of memories or something like that. But, you know, the set of all possible experiences, you know, or the set of all sort of possible points of formation is constrained to a bordered infinity, right? It's not an infinite infinity in scale. It's infinite, but it's a certain kind of, you know, infinity, something like that, right? So maybe I'll try to clarify that up, or clarify. You are not in 100% control of the rules of how, you know, sort of your inner landscape is developed, how your soul develops, how your psyche develops, how your mind develops. There are structures in place, and this is sort of Jung's point too with the collective unconscious, right? There are these a priori frameworks, yes, there are frameworks, right? But there are channels down which the psyche can develop. In the same way that your brain has a structure, right? Everybody's got a hippocampus. You know, everybody's got a left and a right hemisphere. There's a cerebellum, right? It's like they're going to conform more or less to a range of possibilities. And beyond a certain limit, there isn't possibility in those dimensions. So there are limits, even though in certain dimensions there's a degree of infinite variability, right? So, or maybe not infinite, but very, very, very large magnitudes of variability. Okay, so the idea there, one point of Peterson's, is that the psyche is not completely subject to your will in all dimensions and in all directions. There are certain guidelines and frameworks that are in place, even though you do exercise some control. Okay. But also those two parameters are then inextricably connected to the external world, right? It's not like man exists and nature exists, and there's man and there's nature, and there's mind and there's the world, right? We exist in nature, we are bathed in nature, and we are suffused with the laws of nature. We, in a sense, are a part of, right? We are a part of nature. Nature operates through us, and we can act as conduits of the laws and the principles of nature. I mean, that's what we discovered with science, right? It's not us messing with the laws of nature. It's us being able to have a better understanding of how those laws work, and then, you know, perform certain collaborative actions in sort of dialogue with nature in order to achieve these amazing cases that are possible, right? Like, for example, our phones and stuff and our computers. What we're doing right now works because of the grasp that we've been able to achieve of say, how things work in the quantum realm and things like that. And if we didn't have that understanding, we wouldn't be able to do that, right? If our understanding was completely insufficient, none of this would work. So the other element that I think Peterson is highlighting there is like, yeah, okay, the inside, your soul, your psyche, the development of your mind is not as completely free and unbounded and unregulated as sort of consensus or maybe an unconscious consensus might have it. But also what's on the other side, because we are also a part of nature, right? Out in the world, or yes, out in the world, kind of the material world, it has these rules and such, but there is also a dimension to which we can engage in a kind of modification or a reshaping or a directing of what happens in the world in relation to how we're organizing our psyche and things like that. I think that's a bit complicated. So what I'll do is also talk about my personal experience and how it relates to what you're saying here, with sort of going abroad, and how self-authorship comes in there, individuation. So I lived in the United States, kind of consistently up to about the time I was 25. Right, I did my undergraduate education in the United States, and the first 4 years of my graduate degree and my PhD studies was in the U.S. and actually in the state that I grew up in, not far outside of my hometown. So even though I did travel abroad, it was only ever for a few months, right? Maybe maximally kind of 3 months at a time. So kind of a 2 or 3 month sojourn in Italy, and a couple times, and 2 or 3 months in Poland, 2 months in Vienna. I was in Vienna for a while, and I would do that as part of my studies, but never an extended period of time kind of throughout, really up until I was 25 outside the United States. However, when I went to go do my Fulbright research, or my dissertation research, which was through this exchange program, like the Fulbright program, it was the first time that I had the opportunity to live outside of my environment and my social structures for an extended period of time. And it was over 2 years, right? Because it got extended because of COVID. I stayed in Poland for 2.5 years, and everyone, right? This is what's interesting, right? Everyone in the new environment is someone who has not socialized with you. Everyone in the new environment does not have a sort of embedded concept of who you are or your social persona. And so I remember being faced with this kind of idea of like, oh, this is interesting. I thought all of these different parts of me were me, right? That like I was generating sort of, this particular habit, or I was responsible for this dimension of my personality, or how I felt, or something like that. But actually, it was this idea of me, or the other people in my social context, who were kind of pushing me in one direction or another. And say, now that I'm totally isolated from all those relationships, except digitally or by long distance communication, I realized that my motivation, say, for having those habits or moving in that direction or something like that, was totally something that was my reaction to someone else, or because of who someone thought I was, or something like that. For example, like, I realized that I just don't like having food in my house. I just don't like it, because if I'm around and there's food in my house and I'm relaxing, I would have this tendency to unconsciously just kind of eat things kind of passively. And my family kind of does that. And I realized I didn't like that. like, I also realized I didn't like watching TV, right? My family would watch TV a lot, and I was like, wait a second, I actually don't like care about, I don't want to watch TV. Like, I just don't want to have to be looking at, screens or videos or something like that. And I don't want to have food in my house. And that's nothing, it's not like I'm deriding my family or anything like that. No, not at all. But I just realized that actually for me, that goes against kind of my own instincts. And so yeah, so I just, stopped doing that, and I stopped keeping food in my house. And I liked being able to leave. I was like, no, I kind of like this every day. I just go out, I go to the grocery store, I buy only what I'm gonna consume for that day, and then at some point I come home and eat it, right? I mean, it's a little thing, but it's a very interesting thing to sort of move yourself into a different context and realize that this habit that you kept, like, well, I got to go to the grocery store, I got to make sure the house has this, and I got to make sure it's like this, and that's actually, that's something that you picked up from your environment. That's not actually who, within you, with a choice to kind of obey what, a kind of inner voice within you is telling you, that you can then make, but you don't necessarily realize that until you go out into the new environment and experiment with, like, okay, well, I have that social persona for, Connecticut, for my hometown or around my family or something like that. That's not fully who I am, and I don't actually have to take all the elements of that into these other social relationships and other circumstances. So I wonder, wait, how much degree of control can I exercise in this in, even domains back where I was from? So I had that experience. Does that sound more or less like what you were describing there with respect to individuation, self-authorship, and kind of studying abroad?
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, this was another thing that popped up in my mind. Yeah, how much can I exercise? How much influence I have on it, and also then comes in the habits. What you have, that's the generalized or more action, also more fixed action pattern routines, like that. Yeah, having also a big influence on us, and also it's interesting how much you can break them. So this, yeah. But the going abroad was really I didn't went abroad. I just went to Salzburg. This was also kind of that.
Okay.
So from my
You're
home.
originally not from Salzburg.
Huh?
You're not originally from Salzburg.
I'm from Salzburg, more in the south, 50 kilometers. Now I'm in the city.
In the city proper. Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting to live through. And
so to take this back, I suppose, to Edenauts, I'd like to ask a couple sort of a couple practical questions. So for those of us who are interested maybe in following along and supporting your development, I understand that this has been 10-year development process up to this point for building Edenauts. So would you be able to share with us what stage of the project are you at now? What's sort of release timeline like? Are there demos or anything that people can play? Can you speak a bit about that?
We had an early prototype. It's only working internally, and now there is a term called technical debt in software development. The ideas have developed over time, and all stuff doesn't fit anymore. So I said I re-implement everything from scratch, and this is what I'm doing right now. I'm spending a lot of time with, and I have the 20th of February where people can test it out. This is my goal.
Okay.
I think I would achieve that. Maybe it will not be 100% finished, but the functional elements will be there. And people can follow me on Instagram at best. And yeah, if they want to engage, because it's about their talents, send me your weirdest talents and we try to develop that, whatever it is. I like to engage in that.
Okay, great. So not only do you have sort of a play test coming up for people who are interested in giving it a shot, but if you're interested, right, if you come along, right, you can submit ideas of talents or skills or maybe domains of knowledge or investigation to the project to have it incorporated into the game itself.
Yes, for one's own journey then, yeah, for the own talent.
Okay.
And what I'm also doing, I'm making this Edenaut characters. And send me your talents. I will also create an Edenaut character which you can later use in the actual game. Your own character. And yeah, I do this to engage with people and see what they're interested in and what talents they have and how they can be developed.
Okay. So there's at this stage, right, you can get in touch with the project, right? You can create your character ahead of time. You can, also give this information so it gets built into your particular experience of the game when it's fully available.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And do you have I suppose two questions. So is there a release timeline for the full game? And where do you expect sort of platform-wise Edenauts to be available?
Edenauts is a web app at the moment for desktop only. Later we think of making an app also. But at the moment I want to get back to the old stage with the updated ideas, because I did a lot of user testing with the old prototype, and I learned a lot through that.
So it's already been through some significant user testing.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
This was like very important for me because user testing really breaks it down if user like it, and how they react to the processes and
Very good. So Edenauts, a project 10 years in development, nearing release February 20th. If you're interested in checking out Edenauts, you can follow Martin on Instagram at Visorium. I'll have his information in the description. And through his page on Instagram, you can access, you can register for this play test that's going live on February 20th. So it's coming up. It's just a few weeks away. Martin, thank you so much. Thank you for presenting Edenauts. Any sort of last remarks or parting wisdom for us before we sign off?
Yeah, it was a very interesting conversation. Thanks for the guidance you provided me for structuring the ideas. And yeah, it's very helpful to have these conversations. Thanks a lot for that.
Of course. Yeah, thank you so much for making time and for being with us here. Okay, so everyone at home, thanks for listening. Thanks for continuing to investigate the 21st century Renaissance with me. We will see you next time. Take care. Thank you.